Man learns his coworker used his identity for a fake job reference. I'm Tyler, 31, from St. Paul, Minnesota. I work in IT support for a mid-sized healthcare company. I'm generally quiet at work, but I've always been friendly and willing to help out my coworkers. One of them, Marcus, joined our team about a year ago and we got along fine, but we weren't exactly close. The first time I met Marcus Reynolds was during his orientation. He had an easy smile and a confident handshake that made people instantly like him. As the weeks passed, Marcus became the office favorite, always ready with a joke, bringing donuts on Fridays, and volunteering for the team-building committee. While everyone else was drawn to his magnetic personality, I kept a comfortable distance. Not because I disliked him, but because something about his eagerness to please left me feeling slightly uneasy. "Hey Tyler, mind showing me how to troubleshoot this network issue?" Marcus would ask, leaning casually against my cubicle. I'd walk him through the steps, and he'd nod enthusiastically, asking thoughtful questions that made me think he was genuinely interested in learning. "Man, you're so good at explaining this stuff," he'd say. "Seriously, you should be running the department." His compliments always seemed sincere, and despite my initial reservations, I found myself warming to him. During lunch breaks, Marcus would occasionally join me, asking about my background and experience in IT. I didn't think much of it at the time, just a new colleague trying to navigate the company culture. "How long did you work at your last place?" he'd ask between bites of his sandwich. "About 5 years, I'd reply. Started as basic support and worked my way up to senior analyst." "That's impressive. You must have managed some people along the way." I shook my head. "No, not really. We had a flat structure. I mentored some of the newer folks, but never had direct reports." Still, Marcus insisted, that's leadership experience. Taking people under your wing, showing them the ropes. That counts for something. These conversations seemed harmless enough. Marcus was good at making people feel valued, and I was no exception. He'd occasionally ask for my help with projects, claiming my insights were invaluable. I was flattered by his respect for my expertise, though I noticed he rarely took notes when I explained complex processes. Months passed, and Marcus and I developed what I thought was a casual workplace friendship. He'd confide in me about his career aspirations, how he wanted to move into cybersecurity or perhaps management. I'd offer encouragement and occasional advice, drawing from my own experiences in the field. "You know, Tyler," he said one afternoon as we waited for the elevator, "I might be looking for something new soon. This place is great, but I'm ready for more responsibility." "I get that," I replied. "The growth opportunities here can be limited." "Exactly." He nodded vigorously. "Hey, if I ever need a professional reference, could I count on you? Your opinion would carry weight." The request seemed reasonable enough at the time. "Sure," I said, not giving it much thought. "Just let me know when." He never did. A few weeks later, on a particularly busy Tuesday, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost let it go to voicemail but answered on the third ring, balancing the receiver between my ear and shoulder as I continued troubleshooting a server issue. "Hello, is this Tyler Matthews?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes, this is Tyler." "Hi, I'm Elaine Peterson from Meridian Technologies. I'm calling about a reference check for Marcus Reynolds. He's listed you as his former manager at HealthPlus Systems." My fingers froze over the keyboard. Former manager. HealthPlus Systems. I'd never worked at any company by that name, and I certainly hadn't managed Marcus. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake," I said, lowering my voice and glancing around to make sure Marcus wasn't nearby. "I work with Marcus currently, not as his manager." There was a pause on the line. "That's odd. According to his resume, you supervised him at HealthPlus for 2 years before you both moved to your current company." He specifically provided this email and phone number for reference checks. A cold sensation settled in my stomach as I realized what was happening. Marcus had fabricated an entire employment history and cast me as a character in his fiction without my knowledge or consent. Ma'am, I need to be clear about something. I've never worked at Health Plus Systems. Marcus and I have only known each other for about a year, and I've never been his supervisor in any capacity. The silence on the other end was palpable. I see, she finally said. This is concerning. Would you be willing to answer a few more questions about this situation? I spent the next 15 minutes explaining the reality of my working relationship with Marcus. By the end of the call, my hands were shaking with a mixture of anger and disbelief. Marcus hadn't just put me down as a reference without asking, he had constructed an elaborate lie about our professional history, one that could have serious consequences for my reputation if I had unwittingly played along. After hanging up, I sat motionless at my desk, trying to process what had just happened. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Marcus's friendly questions over the past year hadn't been innocent small talk. He had been gathering information, studying my mannerisms and professional knowledge, preparing to impersonate me or at least claim a relationship that didn't exist. I spotted Marcus returning from lunch, laughing with a couple of colleagues from the marketing department. He caught my eye and gave a friendly wave, completely unaware that his deception had been exposed. The casual gesture made my blood boil. How many other lies had he told using my name? How many other companies might have called a different number, speaking to someone pretending to be me? I waited until late afternoon when most of our coworkers had left for the day. Marcus was packing up his bag when I approached his desk, my expression carefully neutral. Hey, got a minute to talk privately? I asked. Sure thing, he replied with that same easy smile. What's up? We moved to a small conference room, and I closed the door behind us. I got an interesting call today, I began, watching his face closely. Someone from Meridian Technologies. They wanted a reference for you. For just a fraction of a second, Marcus's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. Oh yeah. I applied there last week. Should have mentioned it to you, but things have been so busy. The thing is, Marcus, they said I was your former manager at a company called Health Plus Systems. A company I've never worked for. This time, his composure slipped more noticeably. A flash of panic crossed his features before he let out a short, uncomfortable laugh. Oh man, they must have mixed up the information. I'll straighten that out. They didn't mix anything up, I said firmly. They had my email and phone number. You deliberately listed me as your former manager, created a fake employment history, and expected me to lie for you when they called. Marcus shrugged, his demeanor shifting from denial to dismissal. Come on, Tyler. It's no big deal. Everyone fudges their resume a little bit. It's just part of the game when you're job hunting. His cavalier attitude inflamed my anger. This isn't fudging a resume. This is identity theft. You used my name and reputation without my permission to construct a lie that could damage my professional credibility. You're overreacting, he said, his voice hardening. I did you a favor by not bothering you with the details. Most people would just play along and help a colleague out. Most people wouldn't put their coworkers in the position of either lying to a potential employer or revealing their colleagues' dishonesty, I countered. What you did was unethical and potentially illegal. Marcus's friendly facade evaporated completely. Look, it's done now. The damage is minimal. Let's just move past this, okay? No need to make a big deal out of a small favor between friends. We're not friends, Marcus. Friends don't exploit each other. I stood up, my decision made. I'm going to have to report this to management. His expression darkened. That would be a mistake, Tyler. Think about how this will affect the team dynamic. People will take sides. Is that really what you want? The threat was thinly veiled, but I refused to be intimidated. What I want is to work with people I can trust. You crossed a line, and there have to be consequences. The next morning, I requested a meeting with our manager, Jessica, and explained the situation. She appeared genuinely shocked and immediately involved HR. They conducted an investigation, interviewing both Marcus and me separately and contacting Meridian Technologies to verify my account. The process took over a week, during which the office atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Marcus maintained a facade of wounded innocence around our colleagues, subtly suggesting that I had misunderstood his intentions or blown a minor misunderstanding out of proportion. "I just don't get why Tyler would make such a big deal out of this," I overheard him telling a group at lunch. "If he didn't want to be a reference, he could have just said so. No need to get HR involved." His version of events spread through the office like wildfire, and I soon found myself receiving mixed reactions from coworkers. Some offered quiet support, acknowledging the seriousness of what Marcus had done. Others seemed to buy into his narrative that I was being overly sensitive or trying to sabotage his career opportunities. "Maybe you should have talked to him more before going to management," suggested Katie from customer support. "It seems like this whole thing could have been resolved between the two of you. He literally invented a company we supposedly worked at together and told them I managed him there," I replied, incredulous at her take. "That's not a miscommunication. That's deliberate deception." After the investigation concluded, HR called both Marcus and me into a meeting. They had determined that he had indeed violated company policy regarding professional conduct and honesty. The consequence? A formal written warning placed in his file and mandatory ethics training. "That's it?" I asked, stunned by the leniency. "He used my identity without consent to construct a fake employment history." "We understand your frustration," said Brenda from HR, her tone placating. "But this is his first offense, and no lasting harm was done. Meridian Technologies is aware of the situation, and your professional reputation remains intact." What they didn't say, but what became increasingly clear, was that Marcus was too valuable to the company to risk losing. His charismatic personality had earned him favor with senior management, and his technical skills, while not exceptional, were solid enough to justify keeping him on despite this lapse in judgment. As the weeks passed, working alongside Marcus became increasingly uncomfortable. He maintained a veneer of civility when others were present but made his resentment clear when we were alone. "Hope you're happy with how things turned out," he muttered one day as we passed in the hallway. "You could have been cool about it, but you chose to make an enemy instead." The toxic atmosphere began affecting my performance and mental health. I started dreading coming to work, knowing I'd have to navigate not only Marcus's hostility but also the divided loyalties of my colleagues. Some still believed I had overreacted, while others had begun to distance themselves from both of us, unwilling to be caught in the crossfire of workplace drama. After much consideration, I began applying for positions elsewhere. The decision wasn't made lightly. I had invested years in this company and had previously seen a future for myself there. But Marcus's betrayal and the organization's inadequate response had shattered my trust in both. During my job search, I was meticulous about providing accurate information and authentic references, acutely aware of the irony. When I finally received an offer from a smaller but more reputable healthcare IT company, I felt both relief and lingering resentment. Marcus's actions had effectively pushed me out of a job I had once enjoyed, yet he remained, relatively unscathed. On my last day, Jessica, my manager, asked to speak with me privately. "I'm sorry to see you go, Tyler," she said, genuine regret in her voice. "You've been an asset to this team." "Thank you," I replied. "But I think we both know why this is necessary." She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing by reporting the incident. Integrity matters in this field. Just not as much as charm and connections, apparently," I couldn't help adding. As I packed up my desk, Marcus watched from across the room, a subtle smirk playing on his lips. He thought he had won, that his manipulation had succeeded in driving out someone who had dared to challenge his dishonesty. What he didn't know was that during the weeks of tension, I had been documenting every interaction, saving emails, and quietly speaking with other colleagues who had experienced similar, if less extreme, instances of Marcus's deception. I had also maintained contact with Elaine from Meridian Technologies, who had expressed ongoing concerns about Marcus's application after our initial conversation. I didn't act on this information immediately. Instead, I focused on excelling at my new position, rebuilding my confidence, and establishing myself in a healthier work environment. But I kept the documentation, knowing that someday, Marcus's pattern of behavior would catch up with him. Not because I would orchestrate his downfall, but because people who build their careers on lies eventually construct a house of cards too fragile to sustain itself. 6 months later, I received an unexpected email from Jessica, my former manager. "Thought you might want to know that Marcus is no longer with the company," she wrote. "Turns out, you weren't the only one he used as a fake reference. The pattern finally became too obvious to ignore. Several companies contacted us with similar stories. In the end, he resigned rather than face termination. Your integrity was vindicated, though I know that's probably cold comfort now." It wasn't satisfaction I felt upon reading her message, but rather a somber recognition that trust, once broken, is nearly impossible to fully restore. Marcus had moved on, likely to repeat his pattern elsewhere, and I had lost a job I once valued. The only win was in knowing that I had stood up for what was right, even when it wasn't easy or popular. I never imagined someone would use my identity without consent to lie on a job application, and then expect me to play along. The experience changed how I approach workplace relationships, making me more cautious but also more appreciative of genuine connections built on mutual respect and honesty. In the end, Marcus's deception cost him far more than he gained, proving that in professional life, as in personal matters, character still counts, even if recognition of that fact sometimes comes later than we might hope. 3 months after receiving Jessica's email, I was having lunch at a small cafe near my new office when I spotted a familiar face, Elaine Peterson from Meridian Technologies. I hesitated for a moment before approaching her table. "Excuse me, Elaine. I'm Tyler Matthews. We spoke on the phone last year about a reference check." Recognition flickered across her face. "Tyler. Of course I remember. Please, join me." Over coffee, she filled in some blanks in the story. Meridian had almost hired Marcus despite my revelation. His technical interview had impressed them, and one of their senior managers had been willing to overlook the reference discrepancy. What changed their minds? I asked. "Due diligence," she replied. After our call, I insisted on verifying every detail of his employment history. We discovered 3 other fabricated positions, complete with fake company email addresses that all redirected to the same personal account. The elaborate nature of the deception was impressive, in a disturbing way. Her words sent a chill through me. Marcus hadn't just made a one-time mistake with my identity, he had constructed an entire fictional career, likely rehearsing and refining his technique with each application. "Has he tried to contact Meridian again?" I asked. Elaine shook her head. "Not directly. But industry circles are smaller than people think. I heard he's working for TechSphere now, a startup without the resources or inclination to conduct thorough background checks." The information shouldn't have bothered me, but it did. Marcus had faced minimal consequences and had already rebounded. Meanwhile, I had uprooted my entire career, albeit into a better situation. "Does it feel unfair?" Elaine asked, reading my expression. "That he's still out there, potentially doing the same thing to others?" I considered her question carefully. It did at first. But I've realized something important: I sleep well at night. I don't spend every day wondering when my house of cards will collapse. That peace of mind is worth more than any short-term gain from cutting corners. Elaine smiled. "For what it's worth, your honesty made an impression on our hiring committee. We have an opening in cybersecurity management coming up next quarter. You should apply." 2 weeks later, I submitted my application to Meridian Technologies, with accurate references and verifiable employment history. Whether I get the position or not, I know my professional reputation remains intact, something Marcus can never truly claim. Sometimes I wonder if Marcus ever reflects on the path he chose, if he understands how much energy it takes to maintain a web of lies, or if he recognizes the true cost of sacrificing integrity for advancement. Part of me hopes that someday he'll realize that authentic success, built on genuine accomplishments and honest relationships, is not only more sustainable but more satisfying. As for me, the experience has made me a more discerning judge of character, but not a cynical one. I still believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt, just not at the expense of my own values. The incident with Marcus taught me that standing up for what's right isn't always rewarded immediately, but the alternative, compromising your principles for an easy path, exacts a far greater toll in the long run. There are days when I think about how differently things might have turned out if I had simply played along with Marcus's scheme. I might still be at my old job, navigating the uncomfortable knowledge that my colleague had used me and that I had allowed it. The thought makes me grateful for the path I chose, despite its challenges. In my new position, I've become something of an informal mentor to younger team members, particularly on matters of professional ethics. Without sharing specifics, I use my experience to illustrate how seemingly small compromises can escalate into significant breaches of trust. It's a responsibility I take seriously, helping to shape a professional culture where integrity isn't just a buzzword in the company handbook, but a lived value. Last week, I received a LinkedIn message from a former coworker who had initially sided with Marcus. "You were right," she wrote. "After you left, he tried something similar with me. I shut it down immediately. Thank you for having the courage to speak up when no one wanted to hear it." Her message was a reminder that doing the right thing creates ripples that extend far beyond our immediate circumstances. Perhaps that's the true measure of professional success, not just the positions we hold or the salaries we command, but the impact we have on our workplace culture and on the colleagues whose paths cross with ours. As for Marcus, I heard recently that he's moved on from TechSphere, though the circumstances of his departure remain unclear. Our paths may cross again someday, in this industry where connections and reputations matter more than most people realize. If they do, I hope for his sake that he's learned what I have, that the foundation of any sustainable career isn't cleverness or charm or even technical brilliance, but something far more fundamental: trustworthiness.